Make America healthy again. Maha. It sounds good. It polls even better. And now members of Congress are eagerly slapping it on speeches, press releases, and social media posts. But here's the truth they don't want you to know. While they talk the talk in public, behind the scenes, they're actively blocking the very policies that would actually make America healthy again. Joining us tonight to expose this hypocrisy is Elizabeth Kucinich, a nationally recognized leader in whole systems approaches to human and ecological health. She's worked across government, science, and advocacy to push for real solutions from food safety to regenerative agriculture to public health. She's advised Congress, federal agencies, and international bodies and helped found the Regenerative Organic Certified Standard as board chair of Rodale Institute. Elizabeth is here to explain how the Maha agenda is being weaponized as a hollow talking point while the policies that would heal our land, our bodies, and our communities are quietly being killed in committee. Elizabeth, welcome to the show. Thank you so much for being here. Well, we've all seen how the mainstream media plays the game, pushing agendas, shutting down dissent, and spoon-feeding you whatever fits their narrative. And that's exactly why I started this show, to cut through the noise, to call out the bullshit, and have real conversations about what's actually going on. That's also why I've partnered with Ground News, an app and website that shares some of those same values. Instead of controlling the story, Ground News puts transparency and freedom of information first. With Ground News, I can take any story, like the recent controversy around RFK Jr.'s autism comments, and see how it's being reported across the political spectrum. While left-leaning outlets rush to outrage, some right-leaning voices tried to have a different conversation. And Ground News laid it all out clearly. Headlines, side by side, political bias labels, even how many sources are covering the story and from what angle. I can instantly see whether a story is being shaped by corporate-backed liberal media or covered differently by smaller, independent, conservative outlets. No guesswork, just clarity. Even better, Ground News has a feature called Blind Spot that shows you important stories one side of the political spectrum isn't covering at all. It's a powerful way to catch what the media doesn't want you to see. This tool is restoring transparency and honest debate in a media landscape that desperately needs both. They're fully independent, subscriber-supported, and trusted by over 2 million users worldwide. And right now, they're offering my viewers an exclusive 40% off the same Vantage plan that I use for unlimited access at just $5 a month. But this deal is only available through my link, ground.news/Kim, or by scanning the QR code on the screen. That's ground.news/Kim for 40% off. If you've ever felt frustrated by half-truths or media echo chambers, you're going to love what Ground News brings to the table. So check the link in the description and start seeing the full story for yourself.
Thank you, Kim. It's wonderful to be with you.
Well, this is of no surprise. I mean, I'm curious to hear exactly how these members of Congress are killing the Maha agenda quietly behind closed doors, but it is no surprise. You know, it just feels like they always just take the great, the things that people want, and then they go behind their closed doors and drink their whiskey and smoke their cigars and sell us out. That's how it feels like that all the time. So tell us, what are the things that they're killing, how they're killing it?
Well, number one, us. But the first thing that we need to really be looking at, there's two main proposals that are being put into many different legislative vehicles with attempts to move them. One is the chemical liability shield. So while, Maha was created largely, out of the health freedom movement, where people were questioning, whether research had been done in terms of, health and safety with pharmaceuticals, and looking at the liability shield in the vaccine sector, then that same formula is being put out now into agriculture, where so many people are being harmed by agrochemicals that the only way really that the agrochemical companies can continue to have this ecocide, that perform this chemical warfare against nature in the notion of growing food, is to stop people from being able to have any kind of legal recourse and claim against the harms that are caused to them. So a chemical liability shield for agrochemicals is diabolical. So they're trying to make it so you cannot have any legal recourse against any harms. And on the other side of it, there's various forms of the name of this, but it's called, the EATS Act is the way that it's commonly understood, which is a provision on the federal government that stops you from being able to protect yourself locally. So in California, there was Proposition 12. In Massachusetts, there was Question 3. There's other states have, and also municipalities have legislation and provisions that say, you can only spray agrochemicals within a certain distance of a school, or a pig needs to be able to turn around, or whatever it might be. There's ways in which these states and these communities are saying we want agriculture to be better, and we want to be able to protect our communities from said systems and improve the systems. And the EATS Act turns all that around. And it says, no, you can't do that from a federal level. We're going to preempt, and we're going to stop states and municipalities from being able to protect their citizens. So one, no legal recourse if you get harmed, and two, no ability to protect yourself from harm. It's absolutely diabolical.
And these are, so help us understand this. So these are bills that Congress has drafted and they're about to put up for votes?
Well, they're going to be slipped into other vehicles that are moving. So we've got the EATS Act language in certain forms was added to the report language of the Agricultural Appropriations Bill recently. We've obviously got the big, beautiful bill that's going through. Who knows what's going to be slipped into that? There's the Farm Bill. There's lots of different vehicles that are moving. And, these provisions aren't enormous. They're just, little lines that go into other pieces of legislation. And of course, these pieces of legislation are enormous, and it's not a straight up and down vote on one provision. It's an idea as to whether you want to pass an enormous package or not.
They shouldn't even be allowed to do that. That is like, it's like, I don't know how to say it. It's not, it's like thievery in a way, because for them to be, look, when we pass an appropriations, like an agriculture department appropriations bill, that's just funding for the agriculture department. That's supposed to be how much money can the Department of Agriculture get and spend for whatever it is that they're doing. They shouldn't be able to bake in new laws into that. That should just be a spending bill and nothing else. They shouldn't be able to slip in language that limits whatever. And they do this all the time in a variety of bills, right? They'll slip in language to limit speech on something or to make something illegal or whatever it is. And they're unpopular, so they don't want to vote on that one thing as a law itself. So they slip, but they shouldn't even be allowed. The fact that they're able, I feel like the American people should be able to take this to court, to the judges and say, no, you're not allowed to do this. You have to vote on these individual laws. You can't just slip them into bigger laws. And then how many members of Congress actually read these? These bills are massive. These appropriation bills in particular, they're massive.
These bills are enormous, and whether there's even access to those bills, there's a whole different conversation. But yeah, it's a mess. They say you don't want to know how law and sausage are made. Well, we work in agriculture policy and we have to know both. So it's a pretty frightening landscape at the moment. And when we look at subsidies as well, this agricultural appropriations bill, they're slipping in tens of billions more dollars for the most chemical intensive commodity crops, which are not crops that we should be eating daily. They're the ones that are fed to incarcerated factory farm animals, or they're fed into the back of cars in terms of biofuels. And but all that happens in these chemical intensive crops is that we get more chemical exposure. And where there's this amazing movement of Maha, Make America Healthy Again. It's this tremendous movement that's bringing left and right and anybody in between together, understanding there's a big call to health, to making sure that our environment is livable, to making sure that our health systems support us, and that government policy is supporting that and not eroding it. And there's enough people in the community that know how to grow organically, that are able to, really feed people with nutrient-dense foods that are not chemically burdened and that don't harm the farmer. And there's this big game in town, obviously, many games, but the game is always that those who are receiving massive subsidies tend not to be the people who are actually doing the work. They're not the people who really should be benefiting from providing people with wonderful, healthy food. And they're being given government subsidies that then allow them to afford a massive boom mic to make it seem like they're the mainstream, they're the ones that are feeding America healthily, they're the ones that should continue to be supported, and they're the ones that represent everybody. But they're not. They're actually tend to be a very small minority of people receiving an enormous amount of funds.
I read a post today on X. These are the 11 American foods banned in other countries, and they listed all of the banned foods because of the the chemicals that we spray. Like, for example, on apples. Apples, like when you buy a bag of apples, they last forever. And they're not, apples are not supposed to last forever, but
It's
for whatever
frightening,
reason
isn't
they
it?
do. Yeah, they last like a year. They just sit there in the apple bowl and they'll look totally fine. They say that they'll look perfect for months because we spray it with diphenlamine. Diphenlamine, I think, is what they're sprayed with. So this is coated in DPA is another term for it. So coated in DPA to prevent browning in storage, and it breaks down into cancer-linked compounds over time. This is banned. That chemical is banned in 20 plus countries, but we spray it all of our apples. And then who eats the most apples? We give apples to our children. They're packed in the lunches. Like that's the kids are eating the apples. I mean, it's just crazy, all the things, all the chemicals in bread. The post says bread has been banned in so many places, our American bread, and it's because it's made with azodicarbonamide. I mean, I can't even pronounce these things, and our bread is made with this
exactly.
stuff.
They're not foods. Food should be food and not have this list of ingredients in it. And, these ingredients that you can't pronounce, and, it's mystery as to what it is. And that's the basis of, what Mr. Kennedy was showing, in that we need to get back to whole foods. We need to make sure that they're produced so that they are pure as possible, and we need to support the American farmer to be able to do that.
Yeah.
We need to support research to be able to make sure that if we need large scale, or if we need we understand how to do that, organically and regenerative organically, and really look at a system of agriculture which is based on relationship in terms of the harmony with nature as opposed to the chemical warfare with it, and be able to really advance the society that we want to see. And it's polling so beautifully in everywhere. There's an enormous amount of movement of people in the country that see that this is what we need, and we've got leaders who want to do it. But we do need to bring the politicians on, and we need to give more voice to the farmers who understand how to do that system, those systems of agriculture, rather than the ones that are frightened of tools being removed. And we need to help farmers to be able to transition and provide them with everything that they need.
But let's talk about what they're baking into this agriculture, or all of these bills, the language that they're slipping in. So you're saying that they're going to give immunity to the companies who exactly are they giving immunity to for spraying chemicals? So this sounds a lot like the vaccine immunity that the vaccine makers receive. So
it's the same formula for agrochemicals.
So is it the chemical companies, or is it the farmers that are going to get, who's going to get the immunity?
It's that they will not be able, I would imagine it's anybody within the system. I haven't read exactly what the law is that they're trying to put in. It's just the general idea. Each one is written slightly differently. But the notion is, in its basic form, if there's, if it does what it says on the packet, and if there's a warning on the tin, then there's no legal recourse to for anybody who's exposed to this. And as I say, legal liability on the one side, and then with these liability shields, and then with the EATS Act, the inability for communities and states to protect their citizens because of federal preemption.
Yeah. We'll get to that one.
It's a diabolical mix.
Yeah, no, and I want to get to that one in just a second. But going to the one where they're getting immunity for spraying chemicals, I mean, the biggest issue with this is people need to understand that. So if you're a farmer, right, and you're growing apples, and you want people to buy your apples, right? You want them to go up for sale. So you want the grocery stores to come to you and purchase all the apples in bulk. They're not going to buy apples that rot within a week, right? Which is the healthy apple, the apple that we should be eating. So the farmers are incentivized to spray the chemicals because they need to make the sales. So they need the apples to look good. And it doesn't matter what it does to you who eats the apple, right? Because especially if there's a liability shield, then that doesn't matter, because look, I just need to make money. I got to sell my apples, and so I need the apples to last 5 months, and so I got to spray them.
And it's a bigger system. So there's been this, over the recent decades, many decades, this breakdown of local food systems. A farmer, there's enough people usually in an area, unless you're in a really, really, really rural area. But, with apple farmers, there's usually, a good market for people to be able to reach directly, or to be able to, get things. And also, in terms of people's consumption, we need to understand seasonality as well. There's an apple season and there's a strawberry season, and it might not be the same one throughout the entire year. So it's down to the consumer too. But we need to be putting in those local distribution systems, and to be able to make sure that, when foods are available, that's when we're eating them. And, there's, as I say, there's public education that goes around that too. But let's take it a bit further than the apple. Let's look into like the bigger crops, the enormous, not foods that an apple maybe is, but a commodity. And I think there's a really important thing for us to consider here of, we've commoditized food, but the commodities that we're talking about of corn and soy, these are at their basis genetically engineered to start with. And while there's not been enough official, documentation on whether the genetic engineering is good or bad for human health, what we understand in terms of genetic engineering, there's two lead traits. One is they're either pesticide producing, so the plant themselves produces pesticides, so when you eat that plant, you're eating more of the pesticide that it is producing naturally. And the other is that it's herbicide resistant. So when a plant is herbicide resistant, it means that you can spray, and this was being like for the first time in history, to be able to spray your herbicide directly onto your crop. So it used to be that you'd spray your fields before, or you'd spray your fields after. Now you can spray your fields while you're growing. And of course, then you have pesticide residues and herbicide residues that we are then consuming as consumers, because it's being sprayed directly onto our food. That's incentivizing this massive increase in the use of chemicals such as glyphosate, which now is in public debate. And is connected, so directly with cancers and various other illnesses. So that's where, that's really where we need to be looking at the crux of this.
Right. Well, and that's what I'm saying is that the only real way to prevent our food from being sprayed is we do have to ban it. And I know a lot of people want to say free market this or free market that. But my point is, if you're the apple farmer, and you want people to buy your apples, that they're not going to buy them if they're healthier, but they're not sprayed with this preservative that's going to keep them looking beautiful for 5 months. So you have a financial incentive because of the free market to actually spray and for people to eat that. And I guess it causes cancer to the kids. Like, oh, well, the only way is if we say, we don't want these in our country, just like a lot of other people don't want these in their country. Like a lot of other countries don't have these.
And Kim, that's a lovely idea. That's a really nice idea in theory. However, there is the government pushing that that's not something that you can do. So let's look at the case of Mexico, not a domestic market, but an international market. Said it didn't want to receive genetically engineered corn. It wanted non-GMO corn.
Sure.
The American government took it to trade court and was like, no, you have to receive our GMO corn. Now, that is a market force. The market says, I don't want it. What I want is something else. If we provided them with the something else, we could transition, arguably in numbers, but approximately like 5 million acres of American cropland to non-GMO, which means that a lot less of the other chemicals that are going on it as well. That is a market force, but the government is stopping market forces. So all these theories in terms of, well, if only we allowed for, it's not. The consumer doesn't want it.
Right.
We have a food system that's really, geared up to proper industry and distribution channels and long distances and all of that. And farmers have to grow crops to feed into that. I mean, the farmer is not the villain here. It is the way that the system is designed. And it's not that there's one villain. It's just, let's just be generous and say the system is flawed and we have the opportunity to change it. But we have to have the courage to do that. We have the mandate from the people to do that. Congress and the administration have the opportunity to really go behind what Secretary Kennedy and President Trump said, which is we want to make America healthy again. And there's ways to do that without confronting and fighting farmers and without fighting industry, but providing pathways to transition, and to not say we're going to take your chemicals away from you tomorrow, but say instead of putting $75 billion into an additional subsidy program and package as part of this big, beautiful bill, which is going to these large chemical commodity crops. Instead of putting the $75 billion into that, how about we put a $75 billion, assuming we got all that money to spend, into a transition fund, so that farmers are able to understand and retool and relearn how to create the market and to also create the crop that the market actually wants.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely not the farmer's fault. They're just trying to make money. And, with the Apple analogy, I guess I should say, it's that if the chemical was banned, then they would have the even playing field. And they wouldn't be like, oh, well, my apples rot because they're healthy and yours don't because they're not healthy, but the average, but I'm going to go out of business unless I spray the apples because I need to. I have to sell them. I can't just let them rot. It puts farmers are already barely making ends meet. They're barely holding on. We do have to do way more for farmers. And we also need to go back to more local grow, like you were saying, in-season food, local food, not transporting it from, really, and that's part of the problem. I mean, we were transporting food from so far away that they want to put chemicals on it. I think it's important to get to the root of why they want to use chemicals so that we can then... because I don't think they're just spraying. I mean, well, they could be. They could be just spraying chemicals because they're just spraying chemicals because the chemical companies want to make a bunch of money, right? That's probably a big part of it. But if there's a good faith argument on this, it's that they don't really want to poison us. They're not trying to poison us. They don't wish to poison us, but it's because of the way our food system is the direction that it's going in, being more corporatized, large, huge companies, large farms, corporate-owned farms. They're transporting the food from really far away, right? We're not eating local anymore. We're not eating in season. People want those strawberries in December, So it's like, well, you got to...
They don't taste good in December, though,
no,
do they?
Don't,
they taste lovely in the summer.
They don't even taste lovely in the United States at all.
They don't.
I'm here in Italy, and the strawberries here taste completely different. The watermelon here tastes completely different. The tomatoes taste completely different. The grapes taste completely different. I wish I could take the food from here and give it to Americans and be like, this is a very clear showcasing of the quality of our food versus countries that ban this crap. There's a lot of countries that don't allow it.
We understand the terroir of wine. We understand that one slope in the sun or a slope out the sun or in this region or that region or dry or whatever it is will change the taste of the artisanal product that comes out of the end of that process. The same as with our food.
Yeah.
The soil is the basis of it, and the basis of the agricultural systems that we have right now, just like the basis of all other policy in our government, is if we don't like something, we slash, burn, or poison it. Whether it's a weed, whether it is a terrorist, whether it's cancer, It's exactly the same. And what happens in those situations is you don't just slash, burn, and poison the thing that you don't want. You have a lot of collateral damage. And the collateral damage in the agricultural sector, I hate that term, by the way. The collateral damage in the chemical in the agricultural sector is that we're killing the microbiome of the soil. We're killing all of this incredible life systems that have been, evolved over millennia, that have this symbiotic relationship with plants, that provide the minerals, that provide the nutrients, that provide everything that plant needs in order to be able to grow, and supports its own resilience in terms of its own ability to fight off diseases and also its flavor. And when we kill the soil, we kill the rest of the process.
Yeah.
And you talk about, when we talk about subsidies and when we talk about the ways things are grown, very much it's a farmer and a farm system that is looking again back to government. And I'm not ideologically based in terms of, whether government is good or bad or big or small or whatever, but I am watching what's happening in agriculture, and we are giving, the formula to the farmer. In order to get crop insurance, you have to do this. In order to get subsidies, you have to grow these crops. In order to grow these crops, they are naturally paired with these chemicals. This is how you do it. And if you are a farmer that wants to make money, wants to be guaranteed to be able to have, crop insurance, where we are now, been raining the whole of spring and the whole of summer, there's going to be a lot of crop failure. You can't even get the tractors into the fields. The farmers need the backup. But if you're growing to a system that erodes the resilience of your farms and the resilience of your farm system, because the government is telling you that's the methodology you have to use, that's where your subsidies are coming from. You're going to be paid for corn and soy, even though the people don't want to eat that. They want to eat apples. And then because you are growing to a system that is ultimately eroding the functional ecology and the resilience of your farm system, we will on top of that provide you with crop insurance subsidies. So the government's taking on the burden of risk while creating the risk in the first place. And so farmers are largely incentivized to grow to that system, because that is the only way that they can, truly, make money in a way. So.
Okay, so let's talk about the other thing they're doing. So basically what we're seeing with Congress is that they're slipping in this language to say, and now if you get cancer because of these chemicals, oh well, too bad, sorry, there's no one you can sue. Okay, so they're doing that, which that shouldn't be there. The second thing you said that they're doing is they're making it so that local communities are unable to legislate for their local communities?
Yep.
So
this has been a provision that has been fought back in the Farm Bill for the last several Farm Bills. So, certainly over 8 years, maybe 12 years, that people have been fighting back this provision, which is generally termed the EATS Act, which has it's an acronym. But what it does is creates basically a standard of federal preemption that stops your state and your municipality from being able to create any kinds of improvements within the agricultural system. So that could be having restrictions on how close to a school your chemical agriculture enterprises are allowed to spray. It could mean that particularly, people who are really fighting for this at the moment are the pork producers. So in California, Proposition 12 was focused on improving agricultural systems, but it was based largely around the welfare of animals. Lots of millions and millions of animals in this country, and the pigs that are being produced are in crates where the sow crates are so small the sows can't even turn around. They're literally the size of their body. And if you think of a woman who is pregnant in a situation for her a whole time is unable to move. Literally front, back, side to side. It's the size that she is. And California said, this isn't how we want our animals to be raised. And of course, it's not how animals should be raised.
Right.
And so they improved the standards there. And many companies, big companies, have come in. They have funded the transition. They've adhered to the standards, the improvements. They agree that it's good. There's lots of companies fighting on the right side of this, saying, look, we agree. It's a bad system. We need to move it forward. And yet it's those who have lagged behind who now say, no, we shouldn't be able to legislate and make things better in agricultural systems locally. So whether it's you care about animal welfare, whether you care about chemical exposure or any number of other things, they're trying to stop you from being able to determine as a community, what is good for you. And that's, really anti-democratic.
It totally is. And it's completely anti the concept of the federal union that we have as the United States.
Completely.
The ability for local communities to govern themselves, the ability for states to govern themselves. And they should be absolutely allowed to do that.
And look after the health and welfare of their people.
Yeah. Wow. And they're trying to do that. Okay, so what can we do?
Fight it. So this isn't a partisan thing. We've got challenges in both parties. We've got challenges in both chambers. I think people really need to wake up to what's going on and to understand that, there's a lot of things happening in government, but these two things really are very, very serious when it comes to what it is that we need to change. You need to contact your member of Congress and let them know that any version of the EATS Act provisions, however they write it, they give it all different terminology, but whatever it is alluding to that must not be moved in any legislative vehicle. And particularly, that's on one side. The other side, communications around making sure that we don't have chemical liability shields. It's a race to the bottom. And in terms of, talking about that, there's the big, beautiful bill is being pushed through, and, there's lots of conversations and there's lots of challenge, again, from both sides of the aisle. Not everybody's for these things, not everybody's against them. But the people did mandate that we should have a Make America Healthy Again agenda. There is one. And we need to make sure that the administration are standing with that, and particularly that Congress is not trying to undermine those moves.
Why isn't Robert F. Kennedy Jr. screaming about this? Or is he?
I'm not, I have no idea. I mean, he's doing what he can in terms of, moving the Maha Commission report. And, there are so many battles going on. And, he's at HHS. And this is a, particularly USDA.
Agriculture. Yeah, and I know that when the Secretary of Agriculture was being selected, Nicole Shanahan had been public saying that they had a short list that they had given to Trump wanting, certain secretaries of agriculture, and they didn't get any of their picks. And they were like, that's an important for the Maha movement. You really needed a Maha Secretary of Agriculture.
It's an essential counterbalance point. We look at the food that's produced. We know that food is the basis of human health. And then we look at the way that we deal with health and pharmaceuticals on the other side and really address that. So it's really important. And I have confidence that, Secretary Rollins is, listening, and she's trying to get up to speed with lots of different things. There's just so many powers and pressures in Washington. And, there's lots of people who speak very confidently about some very awful things and mask them as being the thing that we need for the country. And of course, now is the time where we can acknowledge people's fears, legitimate fears, like we're trying to take chemicals away from them. We want to help to actually transition farmers and to be able to give them the tools they need. But we need to listen to the people who really know how to do the things that we want, as opposed to learn more about the reasons why we shouldn't be transitioning to what we really know we need.
Well, thank you for coming on this show and educating us about this, because I certainly didn't know this was happening. I know most people watching didn't know this was happening, and we need to know this is happening, because that's actually quite a big deal.
It really is. And this is a unifying cause. This really is about making America healthy again. And we have the opportunity to do that. The people are there. The polling is there. Congress needs to move along.
Well, and we saw what happened when they gave immunity to vaccines. They just started pumping us full of them. Right? I mean, the minute they did that, it was like, oh, so then they're going to pump us full of chemicals in our food if they get immunity for it. I mean, it's just going to be the same thing.
Well, they're doing it already, but now they don't want to pay the bill at the end.
Yeah, but it'll be worse. I suspect it'll be worse when it gets to that. So thank you so much for telling us. Is there anywhere people can go for more information, or if somebody's watching this, and of course they could share this show, but if they were to want to read more or know more, is there any resource that you would recommend?
There's some amazing organizations out there that, working on these things. Center for Food Safety, I used to be their policy director, environmental working group. There's some just all different things in terms of really looking at the underbelly of subsidies, taxpayers for common sense. You can look at, a whole gambit depending on, your political persuasion of what's out there. And I write for the Kucinich report on Substack, and I've written quite in-depth articles on some of these things, so would welcome people. We
do have the link down below to the Kucinich report. And so we will definitely, people should follow there. Are you also on X? I think we have your X account down there, or do we not?
Yes, I'm terrible with social media. So.
It's probably for your health. Yeah, you seem like you're a health-focused person, and so it's probably for your health to not be on it.
I'd rather be out in the woods.
Yeah, not bad. Elizabeth Kucinich, thank you so much for being here. Really appreciate your time.
Thank you, Kim. Thank you.
Hey guys, thank you for watching this clip from the full Kim Iversen Show, which you could check out Monday through Friday, 5 p.m. Eastern at KimIversonShow.com. See you there.